I didn't get an invitation to my brother's wedding, so I went on a trip. Sorry, dear, this event is only for the people we actually love, my mother said. Dad added, some people just don't belong at family celebrations. Finally, a wedding without the family disappointment. Aunt chimed in, real family only means real family. When the wedding was canceled because of a debt, the whole family started begging me, but it was too late. My name is Madison Cole, I'm 28. And if you think you know how this ends, stay tuned. What happens when the scapegoat they cast aside holds the very key to their survival? I still remember the sting in my chest when the invitation never arrived. Everyone else received glossy envelopes tied with gold ribbon, but my mailbox stayed empty. When I asked, Mom's words slid like venom. Only for people we love. Dad chuckled, calling me the family disappointment. Aunt twisted the knife with her smug declaration of real family. So I did the only thing I could. I smiled, booked a flight, and left. While they toasted each other and planned photo-perfect moments, I wandered cobblestone streets in a city I had always dreamed of visiting. I took pictures of sunsets, ate meals alone but in peace, and told myself over and over, they can't hurt me if I'm not there to be hurt. But pain lingers even in paradise. Their voices replayed in my head at night, rejection sharp enough to echo across oceans. Still, distance gave me clarity. If I was always the disappointment, then why did they lean on me for favors? Why did my irrelevant life pay their bills more than once? And then came the twist. A frantic message popped up during my trip. Wedding canceled. We need you. Please help. I stared at the words until they blurred. The people who had erased me from their perfect family portrait now begged for my ink to rewrite their story. But I had already chosen my role, and it wasn't theirs to define anymore. The messages didn't stop. By the time my plane landed back home, my phone was overflowing. From Mom, Madison, we were just joking, you know that. Please, you have to help us fix this. From Dad, it's just money. Families help each other. Don't be stubborn. From Aunt, if you cared about your brother at all, you wouldn't let his big day fall apart. I scrolled through them in silence, each word dripping with hypocrisy. A week ago, I was the disappointment, the outcast, the one who didn't belong. Now, suddenly, I was the lifeline? I didn't answer. Instead, I dropped my bags in my apartment, lit a candle, and sat quietly at my kitchen table. Their desperation wasn't shocking. It was predictable. They had built this wedding like they built every facade in our family, with borrowed money, inflated pride, and the expectation that I would quietly hold it together from the shadows. But this time, the foundation had cracked. The phone rang again. My brother's voice, shaky, pleading. Maddie, please. You know I wouldn't ask if it wasn't serious. We just need $20,000 to clear the venue debt. Then everything can go ahead as planned. I laughed out loud, sharp, bitter. Funny. I thought I wasn't real family. Silence on the line. Then a week, I didn't mean it like that. But he had. They all had. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine and posted a photo from my trip, me, standing against a sunset, free and unbothered. The caption read, sometimes exclusion is the gift. Sometimes distance is the cure. And sometimes, the wedding that wasn't meant for you was never meant to happen at all. By morning, the likes and comments rolled in. Friends applauded my strength. Strangers echoed my pain. Meanwhile, my family panicked louder, and I had never felt quieter inside. The next morning, I woke to a voicemail from Mom. Her sobs were dramatic, almost rehearsed. Madison, please, we didn't mean it. We were under stress. You're our daughter, of course you belong. Just don't punish us now. Punish. That word cut, but not the way she expected. I wasn't punishing anyone. I was simply absent, the way they had made me absent at every milestone that mattered. By noon, Dad tried his tactic, authority. Enough games. You have the money. We know you do. Family pulls together in times like this. Step up. I set the phone down and let his words hang in the air. For years, I had stepped up, paying medical bills, covering utilities, sending money into a black hole they never acknowledged. Yet, when it came time for celebration, I was invisible. That was the lesson they had written. Now they were finally reading it. Later that day, Aunt Lydia appeared at my doorstep. Her eyes darted nervously, her voice coated in false sweetness. "Madison, sweetheart, your brother's heartbroken. You don't want this on your conscience. Imagine the shame if the wedding doesn't happen." I tilted my head. Imagine the shame when your words about real family are the reason I'm not interested. Her mouth opened, but no defense came. She left quickly, heels clicking like a retreating soldier. That evening, I sat on my balcony, the city buzzing beneath me. I thought about the little girl I used to be, desperate for approval, clinging to scraps of affection, hoping one day they'd call me enough. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I didn't crave their speeches, their staged photos, or their shallow blessings. All I craved was the freedom I had already chosen. And as the night air wrapped around me, I realized something powerful. They had disinvited me from their celebration. And in doing so, they had freed me from their illusion. By the fourth day, their panic had shifted into chaos. The wedding planner pulled out, vendors refused service, and whispers spread through the community. The Cole family can't even pay their bills. And suddenly, their polished facade, the one they'd built by excluding me, was crumbling for everyone to see. My brother called again, this time with a tone I had never heard before. Not pride, not arrogance, but fear. "Maddie, I know we hurt you, but you don't understand. If this wedding doesn't happen, we lose everything. Our reputation, our standing. People will think we're a joke." I let the silence stretch before answering. "You thought I was a joke first. Remember Mom's words? Dad's laugh? Aunt's speech about real family? That wasn't just a mistake. That was the truth you believed." His breath caught on the other end. "We were wrong." The words hung heavy, almost fragile. But apologies aren't currency. They don't erase years of humiliation. I thought of all the times I had saved them before, slipping cash into Dad's account, paying off Mom's credit card accidentally, pretending I didn't notice when my contributions were swallowed whole without acknowledgement. Not this time. That night, I posted again. A photo of my plane ticket stub from the trip I'd taken instead of their wedding, the caption sharp but calm. "Funny how the people who don't invite you to their table always expect you to foot the bill." Not anymore. The response was immediate. Friends cheered, strangers applauded, even a few distant relatives messaged me privately with quiet support. And my family? Their begging doubled. But I didn't flinch, because I finally realized their approval had never been love. It had been dependence dressed as affection. And without me, they were finally forced to face the truth. By the weekend, the wedding was officially called off. The venue released a statement, polite but firm. "Due to unpaid balances, the Cole reservation has been canceled." The news rippled fast. Neighbors whispered, friends backed out of travel plans, and the perfect image my family had clung to shattered overnight. I watched from the quiet of my apartment, sipping coffee, scrolling through the fallout online. My brother's fiancé had posted vague captions about betrayal. Mom stopped updating her social media altogether, and Dad looked like a ghost the last time someone snapped his photo at the store. And me? I felt lighter than I had in years. That evening, Aunt Lydia left me a voicemail. Her tone had softened from smug to pleading. "Madison, we shouldn't have said those things. We were cruel. But can't you find it in your heart to help us rebuild? Your family." Family. The word tasted bitter now. Real family only means real family. Those had been her words, her knife twisted at the dinner table. Now she wielded family like a shield, hoping I'd forget how it had been used to cut me. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my journal and wrote, "Exclusion reveals truth faster than any toast. They taught me I didn't belong. And now I believe them." When I closed the book, I realized I wasn't angry anymore. Not in the way I had been. I was free. Free from their expectations, their control, their endless cycle of using me as a crutch while dismissing me in public. For once, Their downfall wasn't my responsibility to fix. And that was the most poetic part of all. Because in pushing me out, they had taught me the most valuable lesson. I never needed their table. I could build my own. And mine would never run on debt. The calls slowed after the cancellation, but not because they had given up. It was pride, their last weapon. Mom sent a single text, "You've embarrassed us enough. I hope you're happy." Dad followed with something colder. "Don't bother coming back. You made your choice." I read them both twice, waiting for the familiar sting. But there was nothing. No ache, no guilt. Just clarity. They hadn't disowned me because I was cruel. They had disowned me because I stopped being useful. Meanwhile, my life kept moving forward. Work thrived, my savings grew untouched, and my circle of friends, the ones who had always seen me, widened with new people who valued me not for what I gave, but for who I was. On Friday, a coworker invited me to a small gathering. I laughed more in one evening than I had in months under my parents' roof. No speeches, no comparisons, no invisible role to play. Just warmth. That night, walking home under the glow of city lights, I realized something vital. The family I had been chasing all my life wasn't the one I was born into. It was the one I was building. Still, I couldn't resist one last move. I posted another photo. A table full of friends, glasses raised, joy genuine and unforced. The caption read, "Real family isn't defined by invitations. It's defined by love." And tonight, I finally felt it. Within minutes, the comments lit up. Dozens of people cheering me on, some admitting they had lived through the same kind of erasure. My inbox filled with solidarity. And somewhere, in their darkened house filled with silence, I knew my parents saw it too. The same silence they once used to erase me was now their punishment. A silence filled with my absence, my growth, my joy beyond their reach. They had tried to cut me out, but all they cut was their own lifeline. By the 7th week, their silence cracked. Mom called late at night, her voice trembling in a way I had never heard. "Madison, we can't face people anymore. Everyone knows. Your brother's fiancé left. We lost everything." I listened quietly, my fingers tracing the rim of my glass. The family who had mocked me as the disappointment now sat in ruins of their own making. She continued, desperate. "We were wrong. About you. About everything. Please just talk to us." Her words should have been healing, but they weren't. Because apologies given in desperation don't carry truth. They carry survival. The next day, my brother texted, "Maddie, I need you. I'll pay you back. I swear." I stared at the message until the screen dimmed. He didn't want reconciliation. He wanted rescue. And I wasn't in the business of rescuing those who had celebrated my exclusion. Instead, I went for a walk downtown. The air was crisp, storefronts glowing with autumn warmth. A little girl tugged her mother's hand, giggling, pointing at holiday decorations. I smiled faintly, realizing how long it had been since I felt joy unshadowed by family obligation. For once, I didn't feel like the forgotten sibling, the outsider. I felt like a woman who had finally stepped into her own story. That night, I posted my last caption of the saga, a photo of my journal open on my lap, a single line scrawled across the page. Exclusion isn't the end of the story. Sometimes it's the beginning of your freedom. The comments poured in, but I didn't check them all. I didn't need to, because the message wasn't for them anymore. It was for me, and for the first time, that was enough. The wedding that never happened became more than a family embarrassment. It became a parable, whispered in corners of town halls, retold by neighbors with raised eyebrows, how the Coles built a celebration on arrogance and debt, and how the daughter they disowned chose silence instead of rescue. And me? I didn't feel triumphant. I felt released. For the first time, I understood that revenge doesn't always arrive with fire and fury. Sometimes it comes as quiet, steady peace, a life lived beyond the reach of those who once dictated your worth. In my apartment, morning sunlight spilled across the floorboards, soft and golden. My coffee steamed on the desk beside me, the aroma grounding me in a life that was finally mine. My phone sat silent, no longer vibrating with guilt-laced messages, no longer chaining me to the role of fixer, savior, invisible provider. Silence used to wound me. Now it wrapped around me like protection. I opened my journal, the one that had caught every tear and every revelation during these months. Pages filled with jagged handwriting told the story of exclusion turned into clarity. On the final page, I wrote slowly, deliberately. They erased me from their table, but in doing so, they set me free. I don't need a seat there anymore. I built my own table, and at mine, love never comes with conditions. That evening, I scrolled through the photos from the trip I had taken, sunsets over cobblestone streets, quiet meals in small cafes, laughter captured in the faces of strangers who had been kind without knowing my story. Those images weren't about running away. They were proof that life could be beautiful without their approval, that joy could exist outside the narrow walls of family. The irony was sharp but poetic. They had disinvited me to celebrate their union, but in the end, they were left with nothing but fractured promises and empty chairs. I, the disappointment, was the only one who had found something lasting. I didn't gloat. I didn't rub salt in their wounds. I simply chose peace. And in that peace was the sharpest justice of all. Because when the speeches fade, when the guests go home, when the debt collectors knock, all that remains is truth. And the truth was this: I had always belonged. Not in their shadow, not in their script, but in the story I chose to write for myself.